Thank you, Jen. And I am really excited to be here. It's really cool how many beautiful places are represented on this call around the country. It's really neat to be on the phone with all of you. And thank you, Jen, for bringing this knowledge to people. I mean, I think it's a really important message, and it's really important to share this with particularly the small business community. I'll start sharing my screen now, but just as like a quick backstory, we started on this journey. Because when generative AI kind of first just came out about, I think it was at the end of November in 2022. And that's not, I mean, AI has been around for a long time. We've all interacted with it on some level, Netflix recommending shows to us, or Amazon recommending products or things like that. But it really was for a while only able to be used by the larger mega corporations. And then in November of 2022, easier generative AI came out that made it possible for the rest of us to use it in a way that we could maybe help our businesses out a little bit, or even do some fun stuff in our personal life. So it's a whole new entryway into AI that hadn't been available before. And so when it came out, we started looking for every kind of webinar and paper and everything we could find. And every time we finished one, we felt a little lost. So we felt that there was one or two things happening. One, it was either a presentation or a webinar that was designed for big corporations with huge resources and budgets and data scientists and all these people who knew how to build their own AI models. Or it was this very hypothetical, philosophical talk. Will AI take over the world? And what we really wanted to know is, how are we able to use AI in our small business in a way that we can do more with the current resources that we have now, and in a way that's going to really help us future-proof our business, remain resilient, and compete going forward. And that's where we are today. So just saying hello to the humans again. We're speaking human to human today, which will become a decreasingly popular thing to do. And so what we're going to cover, and I'm going to try to go through relatively quickly so we have time for questions at the end. But as Jen said, feel free to chime in with questions as we go. It's really important that I'm not going over something that might not make sense, or maybe you don't agree with or don't understand. Just feel free to engage throughout the conversation. I'll pause once in a while to double check on the chat. So we're going to talk about standing out, who is your business, really tried and true marketing principles that apply in AI, but really apply outside of AI as well, just as a reminder that we all do that. Then we're going to do an intro into AI. When we say AI, when we say AI model, when we say AI program, when we say prompt, what are we really talking about? What does AI actually look like? I know there's probably someone on here who've used AI quite a bit, and there's probably some who've never used AI. And we just want to bring it back to the basic level, just so we all know what we're kind of talking about. Then we're going to talk about what are the best ways to engage with AI, how we're going to make AI our digital double, so that it's not just some AI out there in the world, it's kind of our AI. It feels like it's sitting within our business, within our organization. And then finally, at the end, we're going to actually talk about how to create some real content, so that hopefully you're leaving this webinar with skills and something new to be able to do that you couldn't have done at the beginning. So one of the great things about AI is that we can all produce a lot more content in a shorter amount of time. One of the bad things about AI is that we can all produce a lot of content in a shorter amount of time. And what that basically means is, we think we're inundated with information now: emails, spam text messages, phone calls, social media, news, articles, newsletters. In 3 months from now, it'll be even more so. In 3 months after that, and 3 months after that, the more people adopt using AI, particularly in their marketing strategies. And so as the noise increases, it becomes more and more important for all of us to adhere to very sound fundamental marketing principles, and really organizational principles, that are going to help us stand out, communicate in a genuine way, and connect with our audience in an effective emotional way. So it's important to remember, 90% of all the decisions that we make as human beings are based on emotion. We then use logic to justify those decisions to ourselves and to other people. So I like to think I'm a logical person. I like to think that I use reasoning to make my decisions, but the fact of the matter is I don't. Um, the other thing that we know is that 63% of people say that they buy or advocate for brands based on beliefs and values. What that means is it's important for us to continue to put our professional identity at the heart of what we do, at the heart of our marketing campaigns, of our communications, of our emails, so that it connects with people on an emotional level, and so that we can remain genuine and come through clearly in all of that noise. And we'll talk a little bit about some ways you can do that. So remember, type in some questions if what I'm saying maybe needs some more clarity or if I'm going too quickly on something. So what is AI? So AI is essentially just a model or a computer program that can perform human-like tasks, not human tasks, human-like tasks. So AI was basically invented a while ago to pass something called a Turing test. I think probably a bunch of people have heard of Alan Turing. So basically, if a computer can pass a Turing test, that means that its outcomes are indistinguishable from that of a human. So if you cannot tell who wrote a blog post, a human or AI, that AI passed a Turing test. And AI is getting better and better. And basically what it does is it takes data sets and it makes inferences on what the next step should be in a logical way. So some people know this picture very, very well. I see it every day, multiple times a day. This is the open window in ChatGPT. So this isn't, when we're saying AI, this isn't something that you need to know how to code. You don't need to be a technical expert. I certainly do not know how to code, and I'm certainly not a technical expert. This is what I'm talking about. It looks like a chat window. It almost looks like a search. And it even has recommendations for you to click on to get started. But there you'll notice in the entry bar, it says message ChatGPT. When we say the word prompt, what we're saying is we're typing something into that message bar and hitting enter and allowing the AI to respond to it. This is Google's Gemini. It used to be called Bard. Now it's called Gemini. Same thing, just a prompt, just a chat window. You're chatting with a bot, essentially. This one's a little bit more advanced, but there's a lot of the same principles. Copy AI. Really, any generative AI model that you see, it's just a chat box that you type in thoughts, ideas, questions, prompts, instructions. The really exciting thing, I think, for everybody on this call, as we all think about small businesses, is AI, when implemented into an organization, is leveling the playing field. So the Harvard Business School and the Boston Consulting Group conducted a study, I think it was about 765 knowledge professionals. And they had these professionals take ChatGPT and put it into their workflows. And this was back when ChatGPT isn't nearly as good as it is now. This is when it couldn't even search the internet, and it was trained on data that was like years old. What they found was people that they considered to be below average and below average performers got different results, although both positive. So above average performers improved their quality of work by 17%. So even if you're like a high performer, superstar, you're still going to get this 17% increase. What's very exciting is that what they consider below average performers got an even bigger boost, a 43% increase. Now, the way I think about that as a small business is I'm a below average performer in the sense that my company has way more limited resources and budget than competitors or especially the big brands. And so this is going to give me a larger boost than people or companies who already have huge budgets. Overall, among all performers, what they saw is that people who used AI in their workflows accomplished 12% more tasks, 25% quicker time, and improved their quality of work, most importantly, by 40%. So how can AI help us improve this productivity? So it can end blank page syndrome. I'll quickly look. If anybody else suffers from blank page syndrome, just put a very shy hand up in the air like I do. So blank page syndrome haunts me. I have to produce a lot of content, and that could be marketing content or just emails or something like that. Good. I'm glad I see hands. I'm not the only one who suffers from this affliction. It is haunting. I truly, if I have a big thing to start writing the next day, I will struggle sleeping. AI, one of my favorite things about it is it will help us end blank page syndrome. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some really great ways to start doing that. It can help us generate ideas. So some people, they think, I got to go into AI with a command and you must tell the machine what to do. But really, you can just start by thinking out loud with these programs, by asking for ideas, or by saying, I have this idea, this is what I'm thinking about doing, and then saying, what kind of opinions do you have about that? Or what do you think? And that's a great way to start ending this blank page syndrome and get some ideas going. It's almost like you have this brainstorming partner. It can streamline longer form content. So rather than me going into, here's a description of a blog post that I want you to write, or a social media post that I want you to write, or newsletter section or something, I like to, especially when I have time, start with a conversation. So I'll say something like, I'm putting together a presentation for the local leaders roundtable about how to use AI in marketing. And I want to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, that anybody can use something. What ideas do you have about that? And it'll say, oh, that's really great. Congratulations. That sounds like a really fun thing that you're going to be doing. And it gives me all the kudos that I want to hear. And then it says something, it'll say something like, you might want to make sure that people know where to find these models. You might want to make sure that people know what a prompt is. You might want to do this. And I'll say, wow, that's really good. Actually, what are the top 5 things you think people should know? And they'll say, well, here are the top 5 things based on blah, blah, blah that people should know. I'll say, oh, that's really great. Can you use that to create a presentation outline for me? And then it'll do it. And then I'll say, this is actually could make a really good blog article. Can you use this to make a blog article outline? This is what I mean by streamlining longer form content. I'm starting with a concept, an idea, and a conversation, and gradually, when it makes sense and appropriate, I turn it into actual outputs and content. It's very similar to the way I interact with people. I don't just go to somebody and I say, hello, write me a blog post that is this, this, and that. I say, hey, we got to write a blog post. It's going to be really engaging. This is for the audience. Like, what are your thoughts about that? And I'll touch on it just there, but once you have any piece of content, it could be a recording of a webinar like this. It could be a blog article. What you can do is easily, and I say easy, I mean easier than without AI. I don't mean easy, but easier than without AI. You could take this long form content and chop it up into 100 different ways to create that multi-channel campaign where you're reaching your audience on multiple different channels with the same kind of content, but in a way that's appropriate for all the different channels. So for instance, with this webinar, you could take this recording, you can then get a transcript from it. From the transcript, you can say, please create a follow-up email with the top 5 takeaways of this webinar that I can send to all those who participated and all those who registered but weren't able to attend, and include a link to the full recording at the bottom. Then you could take this same thing and you could say, based on all the content inside of this webinar, what are 5 blog posts that might be a good idea for me to write? Or what are some newsletter sections that I could write? And so on and so forth. You have this long form piece of content, you now have this opportunity to chop it up in 100 different ways. Editing and proofreading. This is like the most overlooked benefit of AI, particularly for a small business. So there's 3 people on my team full time. We use some contractors here and there, but we don't have a big team. I used to work at Edelman, the largest PR firm in the world. And there's so many benefits about that place, but one of them is when I wrote something, 5 people looked at it. 5 different people looked at it, put their different eyes on it, gave me their feedback. And that's really important for me. When I write a lot, I can no longer see what I'm writing. I'm into it. I can't. And when I read it back, I'm actually reading what I meant to put on the paper, not necessarily what is actually on that paper. And so one way that I'll kind of get around it is I'll like try to leave it a day so that I can come back and look at it with fresh eyes, but I don't often have that time. And so what I'll do is I'll open up ChatGPT and Bard and Copy AI and Jasper and a few other ones, and I'll paste it in and I'll say, can you please proofread this for me? And it'll give you a whole bunch of really great ideas. It's another set of eyes. And sometimes it'll give you like some ideas and you might not want to use them all. You want to use 1 and 3 and you could say 1 and 3 is a really good suggestion. Can you please work that back into the original copy? And then it'll give you the whole new copy. So AI is great. Does a whole bunch of things, makes lives a lot easier. But it is all proofreading. Michael Whitlow, proofreading is my favorite. Yes, good. I'm glad you're as excited about proof. I know it sounds boring, but it is actually very exciting when you use it for AI. I'm glad to hear that. So we know that AI is really, really wonderful. There's lots of things that we can do, and I'm going to go through very step-by-step on some of these things. But it's important to also note that there's limitations. So it's not that AI can do everything. It's also not that AI can do nothing. If we understand what it can do and what its limitations are, we can better utilize the tool, just like any tool. So AI will inadvertently include inaccuracies or misinterpretations, which is a very polite way of saying that it hallucinates, which is the more common term. It will say things that don't exist, or it'll mix things up, it'll not understand the context, and it happens often. And what makes me a little nervous is when I ask people if they experience it and they say no. It just means that you haven't noticed it. This will happen, especially if you use it up, it will happen. It struggles with nuances, language, culture, and context. Something that's here as well that is I'm not actually listing, but it is biased. So if you think about how AI is trained, it's trained on existing data. But if that exists, and by data, I just mean like real world things that have happened in the real world that has been documented. That's all. So if things that have happened in the real world that have been documented were biased for one reason or another, that is informing the AI models and will implement and will affect the output. Now they know, these tools know that there's bias in there, and so they're doing their best. And I think that apparently they are improving how that bias produces an outcome. But it is still good to remember that and to know that. And there's been some really horror stories about how bias has actually affected real people in negative ways, but it can also just affect outputs in weird ways too. It'll give answers that are plain wrong. I mean, spectacularly. It actually is like one of the best liars I've ever met in my life, because it gives you every lie with a straight face. It's when it tells you the truth, same face as when it tells you a lie. It's very hard to discern. There was one time where I was listening to a podcast, and it's a big popular podcast, and they mentioned the industry that my client's in, which is like a pretty nascent industry. And I was like, this is amazing. We should respond to this podcast and write a blog article and say, this is what the podcast got right. This is what the podcast got wrong. Now, I'd already listened to it. So I went to Bard at the time, now Gemini, and I said, can you access transcripts of podcasts on YouTube? They said, why, yes, I can. I said, fantastic. Please get the transcript for this podcast, this episode, and summarize the conversation the host had about this industry. And it did, except what it gave me was the wrong industry. And it made up an interview with somebody who not only wasn't on that podcast at the time, that person has never been on that podcast, even to this day. I mean, it was so incorrect. Had I not known and listened to that podcast already, I would have gotten in a lot of trouble. And you see this happening. There was a lawyer who got, I don't know what the word is, but like sanctioned or something, because they prepared a brief based on case law that didn't exist, from cases that didn't exist. And so the challenge here is you got to check some of this work, which we'll get into as well. It confuses context, particularly if it's like analyzing conversations. It can get really confused. It doesn't see people as individuals. It can lack memory and ability to understand long conversations. This is why it's important. I just mentioned how it's good to go through a long conversation. Hey, I have this idea. What's your ideas? And then you start arriving at these really nice outputs. After a while, these tools will cut off its character limit on what it can remember. So this is like the limit. And now let's say we filled it up. That limit keeps going down, down, down. Anything above its character limit, it is not considering in the conversation anymore. And so if you've ever like been typing a long time and all of a sudden it like gives you an answer that is so bizarre and has like, you're like having a really good conversation and now it's like talking about something completely different, that's why. So it's good to like continue to reframe the purpose of the conversation every once in a while to make sure that you don't run into that problem. It won't see people as individuals. We're all just clumps of data. Hopefully it can identify which data belongs to which entity, but doesn't always. And there's a possibility of drift. It's kind of like an interesting thing. If you think about the human brain, which I'm not an expert in, but I know myself that if I start to really get deep into one subject, I start forgetting and getting less intelligent about all these other things that I used to know and that I'm not currently putting a focus on, like our brain's a muscle. The same kind of thing with AI. So ChatGPT, 6 months after it was released, got worse at basic arithmetic, not better, worse, because the data that they continued to train it on was not basic arithmetic. And so it got too heavy in everything else and lighter in basic arithmetic as relatively speaking, and it got worse in math. So those things can happen. What we'll probably see is more specialized models that we can avoid this kind of stuff. So if we know that AI can do a lot for us, and if we know that there are some very significant, serious, sometimes impactful limitations of AI, what is the best way to approach it? So we like to think about AI as a fast-paced junior employee And I say this with love because I still exhibit many behaviors of a fast-paced junior employee. And what I mean by that, a fast-paced junior employee is typically ambitious. They are making a name for itself. Again, these are all things I can identify with. Rush to finish tasks, which leaves it vulnerable to mistakes. Needs a lot of guidance. Lacks maturity and understanding. What I mean by that is you know your field, your industry, your business, your organization more than anyone, more than AI, more than anybody else. You know your expertise better than the AI can. The AI doesn't know this stuff. It doesn't have that higher level of understanding, and it cannot replace that. And a junior employee would kind of be similar. A junior employee could be really smart and wants to learn and all that, but you got to teach it. You are the ultimate decider of what is appropriate in any given context, particularly within your industry. And of course, the better guidance you give a junior employee, the better outputs that you will get. It's the same thing with AI. If I go to the AI and say, write me a blog article about how small businesses can use AI to boost revenue or remain competitive, it'll do that. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be kind of off. If I say, I want you to write me a blog article that details the first 5 things a small business can do to get started with AI, it needs to be 1,200 words. It needs to also be optimized for search engines. And it has to be in listed format. You have to use this kind of thing. By the way, the audience are members of Amoeba and the local leaders roundtable. And ultimately, when someone is finished reading this article, I want them to sign up to learn more, or I want them to take the first step or whatever. Now that I'm giving all this guidance, goals, audience, purpose, and everything, the output of the AI and the output of the employee will be 10 times better. It's the same kind of thing. So have a conversation with AI. Just as you imagine somebody sitting next to you. You want to ask for ideas. You want to conduct some research. So particularly if you're writing content, I always want to say something like, you're still, and this is true, everybody on this call, you're ahead of the game. You are ahead now of most people in this country. Most people in this country are not using AI, particularly in a strategic way for their business. Most people. I think the last thing I saw was 12% of all professionals say they're using AI. And I bet if you said, how are you using it? Are you using it strategically? Are you thinking about goals? It's probably less than that. I also know that, it's kind of like this fever pitch around AI. So a lot of people are saying, yeah, I use AI, but like, how are they really using it? And how many people are actually putting in the time to learn the fundamentals and stuff like that. So I want to say this stuff, but I need data to back that up. So I'll say, this is my idea. What sort of data points can you find to help me make this claim or disprove what I'm saying if it's wrong? So AI can really help you conduct research. Just remember to check the sources, because there are some times where I've gotten studies that don't exist, that are about a different thing, and it's misappropriating the data. So you got to check everything. Once you start having these conversations, you turn that into long-form data, you give it content, you give it guidelines, you give it goals, you repurpose that for multi-channel campaigns. It's really nice to be able to have these conversations, but you don't always have that opportunity. Sometimes there's a quick hit. There's plenty of times someone's come to my desk and said, hey, Zach, I need something really quick, and here's what it is. And that's okay. And you could also treat AI that way as well. But when you're doing it, there's some tips for prompting. And again, prompting is literally just typing something into the chatbot and hitting enter. That's a prompt. You're prompting it to react to you, to do something. So you want to provide ample context. The more context, the why you're doing something, what you hope to achieve, how you want people to behave or react when they get this piece of information. What channel is this going to be on? How does this tie into larger organizational goals? The more context you give it, the better it's going to react. Role play, which is not as weird as it seems, is actually really, really helpful. So one of the challenges with AI is not that it doesn't know enough, it's that it knows too much, or it knows a little about too many things. So it doesn't really have an expertise, but you have that expertise. But one way you can get it to focus its thinking, it's where it's focusing on data, is by prompting it to assume a role it could be in your organization. So you say, act as a seasoned professional blog writer, act as a sales executive who specializes in email drip campaigns, act as a social media expert who writes the most attention-grabbing Instagram headlines. You give it some sort of role, and it's going to now focus its mind, for lack of a better word, and give you a much more precise outcome. So this is really, really helpful. Something that I had to discover just by getting frustrated using AI a lot. So if you notice, any of you have used AI, when you're in ChatGPT or Bard, you're very limited in how you can structure the text, right? Like, you actually can do some of this, but you have to do workarounds. But for the most part, you cannot include line spaces. Like, you can't separate paragraphs. You can't use bullets. You can't hyperlink. Like, there's like lots of things you can't do. So the best thing you can do is go into a word processing tool like Microsoft Word, Google Docs, and type out your well thought out prompt. Give the context, give the information, include links, do references and all that. And I'm going to show you a good way to actually structure it. But put your real nice thought on a longer form piece of paper and organize it. And that will actually help the AI approach your task more thoughtfully and more precisely. Have a conversation, provide feedback. We've talked about that. Add tone and voice. This is a really fun thing. I think probably a good amount of people know about this, but it's always surprising to a few. When we start really getting help from AI is when it sounds, thinks, talks, and acts like us. And one way to do that is to get it to actually produce content the way you or your organization or your boss or your friend or your coworker would do it. So I don't want AI to write a blog article. I want AI to write parts of a blog article as if I wrote it. And by the way, I do kind of think, even if I'm using AI, I wrote it, but that's a different discussion. You want to be able to prescribe a tone and voice so that it sounds authentic, it sounds genuine, and it is coming essentially from you. And it's actually not that hard to do. So the two quick ways you could do it. One, you could just describe how you want to sound. I want to sound authoritative. I want to sound informal. I want to sound approachable. I want to always use statistics to back up my claims. You could also take something that you've already written somewhere. So it could be an email that you've written, your website language, a sales email, a collateral, a brochure, something where like the style of the text is something you want to emulate again. You take 2 paragraphs, you paste it into the AI tool, and you say, please describe this tone and voice. And it will describe it for you in a real nice way. Now you save that somewhere. You say, this is Zach's tone and voice for blogs. This is Zach's tone and voice for website. You can do that 100 times and save it like an Excel sheet. And then when you write something, you say, now rewrite it in this tone and voice. Or before it writes it, when you ask it to do something, you ask it to do it in this tone and voice, and you just paste it. We have created in my company tone and voice guides for companies and for people. And what we always want to do is be genuine and authentic to how that person sounds. But the other thing we want to do is be aspirational. So we also want to kind of, in that tone and voice, provide some guidance on where we'd like to see that person or that organization's voice kind of head as well. So one way you could do that is go find maybe a person or an organization that you love their style. You're like, if I could emulate this style, this is what I would do, and cheat. Copy 2 paragraphs of that organization, ask it to describe that tone and voice, and pick out the things that you like and that you want to emulate and mix it with what is genuine and true about you. And that'll be a really nice way, quick way to then be able to get the AI to kind of produce things the way you want it to do. And finally, like a really good format is you don't say, like, I want you to write a email subject line about this, and this is what this is. You would say, given the description of a webinar that I'm giving, comma, write an email subject line that would get people's attention to get them to register. So you want to kind of provide the context first and the action second. Try and refine. I keep a Google Sheet of like prompts that I save, and I have different tabs, marketing, sales, admin, like all this stuff. Highly recommend you do that. Sometimes these tools go down. So like there's some tools you can save prompts in there, but they go down sometimes. And I don't want to be restricted by that. So here's some examples of what I'm talking about. So blog section here, let me just minimize this here on the screen. So I'm doing a check for questions too. Don't forget, more than welcome to answer any questions. Okay, no, none yet. So this says act as a content marketing specialist. Again, there's your role play. Please write, and then however many number of words, for a blog section for GCM article for the H2 heading, which is just like a section heading. It's an SEO term. You can use the informations in the URLs below to help write the section. Now note two things here. One is URLs are capital. What's really great about doing this capital match, where you see the capitals in the paragraph and the capitals below it, is that you can reference context without breaking up the entirety of your prompt. So it would be really kind of annoying if I was going to put, you can use the information in these URLs, open bracket, and then like insert URL comma, insert URL comma, insert URL comma. One, it's hard for me to look at that and organize it. But two, it confuses the AI on some level, because when you organize it the way I'm showing you now, and in the URL section, you actually put bullets and links so it can recognize these are all different, and you have to create that in a Word document, the outcomes are like significantly better. So sales email, this is also where it gets really exciting. Write a friendly introduction to prospects. Notice all capital letters again. In the body include 3 ways our product can address prospects' exact pain points derived from the prospect's website and bio pasted below. Now you have prospects, and I'm pasting the prospect's website or bio. And the product, I'm inserting my product info. This could be just text that I'm copying and pasting. This could be a link to a web page, and it could be product, services, anything. It could be a link to a web page with all this information. We used to use LinkedIn URL profiles a lot, but LinkedIn is getting really good at stopping AI from scraping its website. So you could still use company websites and bios. So before we get into some more use cases, there are, and we talked a little bit about some of it, but there are some things that we probably want to call out and be aware of among any other questions that you all have. So limit sharing your personal information. So the reason for that is, if you've ever called like a bank or a doctor's office or something, and when you call, it says, this call may be monitored for quality assurance purposes. What that means is either someone's going to all of a sudden listen in and see how the customer service representative is engaging with you, and so they can provide feedback, or the call is being recorded, and at some point they're picking out like random calls, or maybe they're having a problem with one sales rep and they're going to listen to a bunch of that person's calls. And they have quality assurance people listening to that to provide guidance and to improve the experience. That's what's happening with AI tools. So there isn't somebody looking at like the engagement, we're going back and forth, but it is possible that a human being will be reviewing the exact chat for the purposes of quality control. Now, the chances that one of your chats is reviewed by a human being is small. The chances that one of your chats are reviewed by a human being with like malicious intent and the courage to act on that malicious intent is even smaller. Still, there's no reason to put your social security number or any other kind of sensitive information into these chatbots, just in case. And yes, these things can be hacked, not more than your Gmail can be hacked, but still they can be hacked. Let's see, we have, how much proofing and double checking do you do after the AI produces copy? Any tricks for noticing hallucinations? That's a great question. So I have two thoughts on that. One, Gemini, the Google one, when they produce an output, they also have a Google button at the bottom. It's like that G. And you can click it, and what it will then do is search the internet to try and verify its own results. So, and then it'll give you a score of like, this exactly matched what we could find on the internet, this kind of matched what we could find on the internet, or we didn't find anything on the internet about what we just told you. So that's one kind of nice way, but you still would like double check. Now, the trick for noticing hallucinations is, and I guess I didn't cover this as much as I normally would in the beginning, so I'll do it now. Basically, AI cannot replace your experience and your expertise. It is a risky idea to ask AI to do something that you don't already know how to do, and to tell you about things that you don't already know about. So for instance, I was writing a blog article last year about how small businesses can use AI. But at that point, no one was using it. I mean, this was I didn't know any small businesses who like even knew about AI. And so I asked, I think I was using Copy AI. I said, I want to show small businesses that they can use AI. Can you give me some use cases from larger companies already using it, but that are really simple that anybody could like gain insights from? That showed that using AI improved productivity or efficiency. And one of the examples it gave back, it said, sure, the New York Times uses AI to generate headlines. And that the headlines that AI generates actually perform better and have a higher click rate than the ones generated by humans. That was like a red flag for me because I read about AI all the time. I read the New York Times. I have already researched tons of stuff about companies using AI, and I had never heard of that before. So I said, that's really interesting. That's actually like the perfect thing of like what I want to show people. Can you give me the reference for that? And it gave me a link. And then I clicked the link and the article had nothing to do with it. So then I went back to the AI and I said, this article has nothing to do with what you just told me. And it said, I'm very sorry. I made a mistake. I'm still new at this. I'm just being trained and like all this stuff. Here's the actual link to the study. I clicked that link and it said 404, which is an error message, meaning that that web page does not exist. So I was able to notice it because I was asking AI to help me with something that I would have done without AI. Like I wouldn't have, like I still would have done it. It just would have taken me like way, way longer. And so one of the best ways to be able to notice hallucinations is when you're operating in a field that you're already comfortable in. So you already have this expertise. If a junior employee came to you and gave you that output, like how much would you check it? And which parts would you check? You kind of would know. Someone's making a claim using data or statistics, like always check that. But then there's some other things that like you just have to do it kind of on a use case basis. Another thing you could do, the final trick on that is just pull it out of one tool and put it into another. So if ChatGPT gives you an output and you're not sure about it, put it into Google's Gemini and say, can you check this? Does this make sense? And vice versa. And it's like having another set of eyes on it. Okay, so that actually covered some of the things in Beware. So that's a good question and good timing. So limit sharing personal information. Use pseudonyms. So sometimes we work with government contractors who literally are not like allowed to put certain words into certain places that aren't approved, and that's okay. You can use pseudonyms. You can make up different numbers that aren't the exact numbers you're using, or whatever. Different cases, different scenarios that are not exactly what is real, but will still help you with your process. Check privacy policies. So I actually gave a presentation this morning. There was like 100 people in the room, and one person actually raised their hand and said yes to the question I'm about to ask. And I was very surprised because no one's ever done that. And the question I always ask is, has anybody ever actually read a full privacy policy? I haven't. This person apparently has. Okay, I believe her. But what you can do is take the privacy policy or a link, the web link to the privacy policy, put it into AI and ask questions about it. So what you can say is, according to this privacy policy, how is this platform using my data? Or according to this privacy policy, like what are the top 5 things that a small business should know when using this that could impact their privacy or that could impact their reputation or something? So you can kind of use AI against itself. Only use reputable providers. So don't use like your neighbor's AI model. As much as you like your neighbor, there's significant privacy and regulation and firewalls and anti-hacking systems and cybersecurity that these people are putting into it that you want to take advantage of. And those are the big players, unfortunately. Or fortunately, Google and Microsoft and Amazon. I mean, they're the ones who have like the biggest safeguards at the moment. I think that will change in 6 months where we'll have more open source availability to this stuff that's safer. But at the moment, if you're already using Microsoft or Google, then by using one of their tools, you're not exposing your business or organization to additional risk. You're just introducing a new channel of risk, if that makes sense. So like, it's still going to be hard for someone to get past Google's cybersecurity to get into your email as it is to get into your Gemini stuff. The other thing is these tools, these companies are indemnifying its users. So Google, Microsoft, and Amazon are indemnifying all of us. What that means is if we were to produce content from one of these tools that included copyrighted material and then claimed it as our own because we got it from the AI, and then one of these people where we copyrighted it from tried to sue us, currently these organizations would step in and take on the lawsuit for us. They want to do that because they don't want people to be too afraid to use it. I've never heard of AI plagiarizing, and just copy and pasting to Google to double check. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it's possible, but it's just not like a real common risk. But even if it does happen, you're protected with the big ones. Restrict access to your usage. Again, think about it as like your Microsoft Teams or your Google like documents and storage. It's the same permission levels. Train your new team members. So like a lot of the stuff we're talking about today is like really important to know when you're going using AI. So I wouldn't have like one of my team members just start using AI without having to go through some sort of training or just have some understanding of like about the potential risks. And evolve with the changing workforce. I heard someone today say, I thought it was pretty smart. They said AI is not going to replace jobs, and I don't know if that's true. But what he did say, what I thought was interesting was it's more likely that somebody who knows how to use AI will replace the job that you have if you don't. That I thought was pretty interesting and makes a little bit more sense to me. So evolve with the changing workforce, which is what you're all doing right now on this call and what Jen is set up to allow us all to do. Okay, so I will breeze through this because we've gone over a lot of it, but this is the tone and voice. So without tone and voice, boost your business productivity by leveraging artificial intelligence. AI is helping businesses streamline operations. So this is like a description of an event. Now I just said, rewrite this with a quirky, approachable tone and voice. That's the only guidance, which is too lazy, but just as an example to show you. And this is what it wrote. Give your biz a turbo boost and make your to-do list do itself, sort of, by buddying up with AI. AI is the cool geek turning, fab speakers and all this stuff. So that slight guidance will change the output and give you an example of how much you can really make this your own and tweak how this stuff talks and thinks. So when you're creating content, start with a strategy. We hear all the time, I know I should be posting to Instagram. I know I should be posting to LinkedIn. And I should be doing a newsletter. I should be doing this. Well, okay, but really what it is thinking more largely about the goals of the organization. What do you want to accomplish? And then when you're asking a guy to do that, provide that insight so that everything that you're doing can have a larger, more shared impact. Understand who you are, who is your business. Again, that's how you cut through the noise. Be genuine and describe that to the AI tool so that it can help communicate in a genuine way that is authentic to you and your organization. Define your audience. Who are you speaking to? What do you want them to do? And it's not just going to everybody. It's like an old comms thing. If you try to speak to everyone, you speak to no one. Really, the best thing to do, even if you're creating a mass, like a communication that's for a lot of people, is you think of one specific person in mind and you write to that person and then you broadcast it. Paid tools versus free tools for very small businesses. Yes, I will do that in a moment. That's a great question, Dolores. I'll do that in 1 second. Identified channels. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, newsletter, all that stuff. Plan out a week in advance, maybe for the year, if you're fortunate enough to have that luxury of time. Start with an attainable cadence. Trust is one of the 3 pillars. Consistency is one of the 3 pillars of establishing trust in any relationship, professional or personal. So you don't want to start producing a whole bunch of content after this webinar and then you go silent for 2 weeks. You want to do a cadence that's very attainable, that you can keep up no matter what. That's how you build trust with your members or your customers or whoever, which is very important. That's why they'll do things with you. Measure and optimize. So we talked about this. I'll go over that quickly. We don't need to do it again. Remember, AI systems are always good as the data they're given. Provide context and audience. Prescribe tone and voice. Be as descriptive as possible. Use imaginary scenarios and role play, which we talked about. So these are a whole bunch of different use cases and things which we can talk about, but I also want to pause to answer that one question. So actually, I think I have it at the end. I have a slide. Yeah, let me just play from here real quick. So these are some tools that we use at a good amount. So general is ChatGPT and Gemini. That's the Bard stuff. Writing, Jasper and Copy AI. Video, Runway and Pictory. I'm still not very impressed with any video AI tool, but it's something to play around with. But it's not really. I don't think there's a good business use case for it. Imagery, you could create images right into the paid version of ChatGPT, right into the free version of Gemini, which is Google. And Midjourney is a little bit complicated. Adobe, if you have someone who knows how to use Adobe, their thing is amazing. Canva is also amazing. So the difference between the free and the paid. So first of all, if you're new to AI or beginning in AI, you will have a hard time quickly outgrowing the abilities of a free version. So ChatGPT, there's a free version. Gemini, there's a free version. Jasper, there's a free version. Copy AI, there's a free version. All these, the free versions are very powerful. Some can do a little bit more than others. ChatGPT, when you start paying like $20 a month, you get access to like other functionality within the tool that you can call on, which is actually quite good. It can search the internet and do things like that. Gemini, they just released their paid version, so I don't really know what the difference is for that yet, but apparently it's just better. I guess we just trust them for that. Jasper and Copy AI, both the free versions, you can save tone and voices. So rather than prescribing them, you just click a button and it'll know to write back in a certain tone and voice that you label. But if you do the paid versions, you can do like integrations with SEO tools and things like that are like pretty fancy. And then also with Copy AI, you can automate workflows at scale. So what I mean by that is you can write like with any AI free tool, you can like, let's say you have a sales brochure or a membership packet or something like that. You can take that information and then put like the link to me on my website and say, write an email that matches the benefits of this thing to Zach's exact pain points based on information from him about him on his website. So that's like a specific, you're talking to me, to Zach. If you had an Excel sheet that had all of your targets, name and website, you could upload that Excel sheet and write those very specific personal emails at scale. You could do like hundreds in 10 minutes. So you can write hundreds specific emails to specific people about something in like 10 minutes. And that's the Copy AI paid thing. But the free thing, everything, all the tips, all the prompts, everything that I talked about today, you can do in the free stuff, except for that workflow scaling tool that I just talked about. So I know we wanted to save about 15 minutes and I only have 9. I mean, I can say a little bit later if you want, but it might be a good idea to stop for some more questions to make sure that you're getting the value out of this. Let me just try to click on the chat here. Here we go. Is there a way to create profile settings with your tone and voice, job title, perspective, organization values, and mission, or is that just done through past prompts? And do you suggest providing that context with every prompt? That's a great question, Jen. That's a very good question. And the answer to that question changed yesterday compared to if you would have asked it the day before. So firstly, there are tools. I think that they're mostly paid. I think you have to pay for them. ChatGPT, that version, and Copy AI. There are tools that you can put that information in there. So it's like a window. You just put that information. It knows it when it's typing. You can also put it into like an info base, so it's like a file repository, and call on those specific things whenever you want. It makes it a lot easier. ChatGPT yesterday announced that there is an ability in the paid version for it to remember and or forget some of your chats. So it doesn't mean that it's going to use your chats to train its models, but it will mean that it can use the chats you want it to remember to engage back with you with that context. So yes, you can like say like, this is my business, I'm GCM, I'm this and that. Like, so every time you're talking about GCM and you've told it to remember it, it'll know when I say GCM who I'm talking about. It's really a good question, and it's evolving every day, that question, and it's a really big like talking point in the whole world of AI. Can we have access to the slides? Absolutely. I'm more than happy to. I mean, yeah, I'll send them to Jen, and Jen, you can send them out. I'm more than happy to share that. One other thing I can share at the end is here's a QR code. So this is like a 48-page. Oh, right, and the recording today. This is a 48-page document that we put together. It's not that scary. There's a table of contents. You can click on the link. It'll take you to the sections that you want. You do have to give me your email if you want it. in this thing. If you don't want to give me your email, I'll just send this to Jen and ask Jen for it, and she'll just send it to you. This is just what I include in all my presentation. You don't have to give me your email; it's no problem. Jen, I'll send this to you as a PDF, and you can share it with whoever you want. It's free. It should be very useful. It'll have lots of prompts in there, and it's a very good starter guide, I think, to get you out there. A lot of things that we covered today is in
I have a question that I feel like would be easier to say out loud.
there. Okay, yeah.
So in college and from my experience, I have noticed that some people view AI as an evil tool and they don't want you to use it. And so how do you recommend going about that conversation or just speaking to those who don't see AI as a tool?
That's a great question. I'm very glad you asked that. So I do think the college and academic setting is slightly different than the business setting. And now this is a little bit, hopefully I don't go too far off on a tangent here, but AI is replacing the ability to learn, or the necessity to learn. And the problem with that is, I believe, and I think a lot of people do, that the great thing about learning is learning how to learn, not necessarily the subject matter that you're learning about. I mean, that's good too, but like learning how to learn is an extremely important thing for human beings to be able to do. And I find it myself, I use AI so much that after a while, if I just have to like write manually an email, there's sometimes like if it's a Friday, I'm like, I can't even write an email. Like my brain is too reliant on this stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I need to take an AI break. And I take an AI break and I like get the functionality back in my brain. So there's a real concern. How that's going to shake out in the academic world, I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's going to be like calculators. When calculators came out, everybody was very scared that we were going to stop learning how to do algebra and arithmetic in our brains, which we have. But I don't think anybody's like crying to go back to that days before the calculator. But this is kind of like a bigger thing than the calculator because this is like a calculator for everything. So I don't have a really good answer about academic. My kids are 3 and 1, and I hope that they figure this out before they get to college or high school. I hope, because it's I don't know where this goes, and I'm really actually quite worried about it. Now, on the business side, I do think it's really important to be transparent. Now, I don't mean every time you write something with the help of AI, you say this was generated by the help of AI. If you want to do that, there's no harm. But we put it everywhere. We are using AI. It's on our stuff. It's on our website. It's like we are proud that we are using the latest technology to serve our customers and our people better and our network better and to make a bigger impact in our communities and to do things. So we're like really proud about it. The other thing I can share with you, Jen, if you want to share with people, we have quite a long AI policy and usage document template that we've created that you can all use. And even if you don't really need a formal template in your organization, it'll still give you a lot of good ideas about how to think about this usage. There are some people who think you need to disclose it every time, but I used to work at Edelman, the largest PR firm in the world, which I mentioned. So we had all these people. If I wrote one blog article, it was the product of like 7 of us. It wasn't just me, even though I kind of led the thing. In no instance did I ever like put, this was created by, and then list all 7 people who worked in the blog article. In fact, actually, the clients always took it and said that they wrote it, which is part of the business of marketing, which is fine. So like people say AI wrote it. I just personally don't think AI wrote it. If I were to ask AI to do something, and Gabby, you were to ask it to do that same thing, we would get different outputs. And then how we would respond to that and ask it to edit it and change it would be different. So I think I am the creator, and I've used a very advanced tool to get me to that process. So we talk about it all the time. But I think more transparent you can be, the better. I also think in 3 to 6 months, even people who aren't really using AI that much will say that they are, because it'll be kind of like saying like, oh, we don't use like the internet or emails. Like that would be a real wild thing to say these days. And it's just the technology and where it's going. So hopefully that answered your question. It's a really good one. The education thing is, can't figure out where that's going to land, and I hope we figure it out. I typically put in my post human written. Yeah, I mean, that's great. Especially if you're like not using it at all and you want to show like this came, old fashioned human brain stuff. I think that's really cool. But again, like as more transparent as a policy as you can be is better. I think I'd be proud of it. I'm proud that we use AI and that we know how to use it. Do you suggest using one AI account login for team members? We have the same organization. We have 3 employees. Should we be using the same account or have individual accounts? So, okay, so like a tool like Copy AI, it's like, and I have a discount code if you want to use it, 40% off the first year. But like overall, it's like 200 something dollars for the year, for the entire year. So, and that's not affordable for everybody. But if it is affordable, then you can manage the licenses. I think you get like 3 or 5 licenses so that each person can have their own account, but you can be the admin and manage it like you would with Gmail or Facebook or anything else. But you can also work together on projects in that platform. If you're going to share a login, you just got to be really comfortable. Like, I don't really recommend it. You have to be really comfortable with people seeing each other's stuff. Like, I wouldn't share email logins, so I wouldn't really share AI logins. And if you're going to have people, people can sign up for their own free accounts and use it for personal and stuff. When I send the policy document, you can maybe think about that as well too. But if you can, spend a couple $100 and manage everybody's permissions and access, and that'll keep it a lot cleaner.
And Zach, I know we're at
Yeah.
near the top of the hour, and I want to let people, stay, and thank you for being willing to stay. But I just wanted to thank you for what you presented us today. And I know people are thanking them and hopping off. And I want to thank all of you for being here and taking the time out. I will definitely send the video recording. I'll send the guide. And any questions you have, if you can't stay longer, just reach out to me.